stand up straight. Hello there, my friends. Today I'm hitting you with another curmudgeonly, bitter, complaining video. Gotta balance out the Metroid hype, you know? And while not everyone likes these kinds of videos, at the very least I know I'm complaining on behalf of a pretty good amount of people. Because the Switch is rapidly closing in on 100 million units sold. And while of course I don't have exact figures, I'm willing to bet that a substantial number of those owners have experienced the frustration that comes with Joy-Con drift. I mean, with an install base that high, even a small percentage can still mean millions and millions of people. And we know that this is indeed a widespread problem. At the time of this recording, as the Switch coasts deeper and deeper into the second half of its life, I can't help but reflect on the absurdity of the whole situation. It seems like such a pressing issue, yet year after year goes by without Nintendo truly addressing it. I already did a whole video on the Joy-Con drift thing, so I don't need to go into great detail about what's going on and why it's super messed up, but I would like to draw attention to the fact that it's still a thing. Even after 4.5 years. At this point, it's been so long that I think a lot of us have just sort of gotten used to it, accepted it as an unfortunate reality of being a Switch owner. But while there are multiple ways we can address drift, whether it's contacting customer support for a replacement or making the repairs ourselves, I'm not willing to let Nintendo off the hook for this one. This is not a conversation that I think should just go away, because it sets an incredibly poor precedent for a company that once prided itself on delivering the best user experience possible. So if you will, please join me. Let's have a good old grumpy talk about how after all this time, Joy-Cons still absolutely stink. It's been about 2 years since my initial video on this subject, so what I'd like to do first is take a look at what's happened since then. What's been added to the story? How has it changed? Has this problem gotten any closer to being solved? Well, let's look at the timeline. At the end of that video, I went on a whole thing about how maybe by the time you're watching this, Nintendo has fixed the whole thing, and we can definitely start by addressing the fact that that did not happen. We're basically in the same boat now that we were 2 years ago, so good place to start there, huh? Also pretty notably though, since that video, the entire world has been plunged into a pandemic that's changed the very fabric of society. That's a thing. And like, maybe we can give Nintendo a little credit because of that. It's true that supply chains have been interrupted. The whole world of electronics manufacturing is in a state of flux. Sometimes people haven't even been able to go to work. This is all stuff that would make solving a problem like Joy-Con drift more difficult, sure. But things are still moving. Companies are still making and selling products. Nintendo is still selling these Joy-Cons and putting out new games to use them with. The world felt like it was at a complete standstill for a while there, but things are indeed moving right now. And yet the issue is still not moving much at all. And it wasn't really moving much leading up to the pandemic either, so I'll give them a little leeway, but not much. If they'd been really trying up to that point, then had to stop, then maybe, but So what else has happened since 2 years ago? Well, apart from times when repair centers have had to shut down, Nintendo has continued to offer free repairs and replacements in eligible territories, despite deciding that this is an issue that needs addressing, at least on some level. They still haven't rolled out the service to every territory. And despite this being an important issue, they still haven't made an effort to communicate with the install base as a whole that if you live in the right territory, you can get your Joy-Cons fixed for free, even if their warranties have expired. Most people just plain don't know that this is a thing they can do. In one of the only actual developments of the issue, at one point last year, Nintendo did offer a sort of apology for Joy-Con drift. They made a statement saying they were aware that some people were experiencing problems, but that they weren't at liberty to say more because of the ongoing lawsuits. And oh, that's another thing that's been happening. The lawsuits! A class action lawsuit had already been filed against them, but by now the lawsuits have mounted. The initial one has grown alone, and even more have been filed, including a formal investigation of the issue in France. As some people have pointed out, it might actually be true that these lawsuits have put Nintendo into a weird position where they can't do or say much without incriminating themselves. To fully acknowledge the issue might be seen by a judge as an admission of guilt. Because the biggest problem here isn't just that Joy-Cons drift. It's that Joy-Cons drift and Nintendo plugged their ears and continued selling them without redesigning them or otherwise presenting the issue for years before these lawsuits even came up. And that's one reason I have zero sympathy for them here, and I hope they lose all these lawsuits. They have been selling a faulty product. They have been profiting off of our misfortune. And that's what these lawsuits are focusing on. And if Nintendo is failing to properly address the issue because they don't want to incriminate themselves, yeah, I get it, but here's why that doesn't justify their actions in my eyes. They've already incriminated themselves. It's easy for anyone to see that they've been profiting off a problem they chose not to fix. They've acknowledged that there's a problem. They've started offering free repairs beyond warranties because of it. They've done the bad already, and they know that we know that they've done the bad. The only way to actually fix this situation is to fix it. And if they're unwilling to fix it because that's like admitting that there's a problem that they didn't fix, then that just solidifies the idea that they don't plan on fixing it. If addressing the problem would be incriminating, then their plan is clearly to avoid taking responsibility entirely. Because what else could they possibly be doing in that courtroom? This is a real, tangible, widely documented, proven problem. How do they plan on defending themselves? They're either going to try and convince everyone that there's no problem, it's just not a widespread thing or whatever, or they're going to admit that it's a problem, but that this has not been a case of planned obsolescence for the sake of profit, as some of these lawsuits claim. Problem is, if they go that route, then what about the tens of millions of Joy-Cons they've sold since these lawsuits began to hit? What about all the money they've made in the time since they were made aware of this problem? How does that look? It's like I said in the first video, I don't think they planned for Joy-Cons to start failing, but when they've made this much money from their problem without fixing it, how's that going to look to a judge? They're kind of in an impossible situation here, but it's entirely their own doing. But I can't pretend I know anything about the legal system anymore, so let's get back on track here. Beyond the lawsuits, we've had a few other interesting little happenings. Nintendo announced a new Switch model and assured us that the Joy-Cons were not going to be upgraded in any way. So that's cool. Add a little more insult to injury there. I mean, just continuing to sell these Joy-Cons is bad enough, but to keep introducing new and improved hardware, but not new and improved Joy-Cons? That's just mean. For a little bit there, it looked like someone might have found an answer to drift. They discovered that putting a little bit of foam or cardboard or something to apply pressure to the back of the stick helped a lot. But this doesn't seem to help in all cases, unfortunately. In fact, people realize that Nintendo has been putting a little foam backer in Joy-Cons for a while, and clearly the problem persists. On my end, I've barely been playing handheld at all these last few years, yet one of the Joy-Cons I got with my upgraded Switch with the better battery life and all that is now unusable. I gave my old Switch to some family members, and they've reported that those older Joy-Cons, which had both been replaced by Nintendo, are now unusable as well. And remember the story I told last time about my friend and his son? I've been told that now they have a box dedicated to unusable Joy-Cons. Just a big old box of drifting sticks. Yeah, they know they could get them fixed by Nintendo, or take the time to fix them themselves. But all that's easier said than done. And that's one thing I'd really like to focus on here. Because as I said earlier, it's absolutely true that there are ways to fix your Joy-Cons. Some people have luck with canned air or contact cleaner. My friend Chris, editor and producer of Arlocast, has gotten pretty good at replacing sticks. And at any time, I could either take my messed up Joy-Con to his house or talk to customer service and take it to UPS and send it to Nintendo. But man, that's a whole thing. Isn't it? Some might accuse me and others like me of laziness, but when at any given time you've got 500 things that need your attention and you can give attention to like 10 things a day, tops, and that's on a good day, getting a controller fixed has a way of slipping down the priority list. And it's especially hard giving my attention to something that shouldn't need my attention in the first place. We might have options for fixing our Joy-Cons, but these are not hoops we should have to jump through. This is not something I should have to deal with so frequently. This is not a burden for the customer to shoulder. And for every person who knows how to get their Joy-Cons fixed but doesn't have the time or the energy to, there are probably loads more people who don't know how to get their Joy-Cons fixed. People outside of these gaming discourse circles don't know about any of this. And this is a huge point that I'd really like to stress. I can't even imagine how many kids out there aren't even really aware of what the problem is, and thus have no hope of getting it fixed. On my original video, there's a depressing comment about a person trying to help a kid beat something in Breath of the Wild, and realizing that the kid couldn't beat it because his control stick was literally always tilting fully in one direction. The kid just kinda had to work with it. I've actually got a similar story. My nephew plays my Switch, and recently he grabbed the Joy-Cons when my Pro Controller died. He couldn't even tell that the left one was barely usable. He couldn't tell that it was pulling and sticking. I guess he just thought he was messing up a lot that day. How many kids have had to go through this? How many kids are having trouble playing their games, but there's no one around to help them? And even if they know there's something wrong, they definitely can't just ask their parents for a $70 pair of controllers that they already own. Considering how important video games were to me as a kid, it's a genuinely depressing scenario. I'm not even kidding, that's heartbreaking. If I was struggling with a faulty controller during my most formative years and had no help and no alternatives or replacements, who knows how that might have affected my enjoyment of games and ultimately my love of them moving beyond that point. If I let myself, I would dig deeper and deeper into exactly why Nintendo has dropped the ball so hard here, but again, it's all there in the first video I did. While I'm talking about the subject though, I'd like to cover a few more things. I think it's very strange and more than a little disconcerting that there are still people out there who think this is a non-issue. I still see people claim that this happens across all systems, or that it's merely a result of people misusing their controllers, which is, of course, absurd. I'm extremely careful with all of my systems. I've never had any other controller drift in any way, nor have I experienced it happening across the hundreds and hundreds of different systems and controllers I've been in contact with throughout my life, including ones that were misused. And yet, every Joy-Con I've ever used has developed drift, which has inevitably led to unusability in every single case. To anyone who thinks Joy-Con drift is bogus, I can't really say much. My words will do nothing. But at the very least, I did rerun the poll I did last time, and I have to say, last time turned up some pretty unsettling results, but this time the picture is even more grim. I mean, I expected more people to be affected by this as time went on, but this is nuts! Over 50% of the people who took this survey have had to replace at least one Joy-Con, and a whopping 16% would call this a constant problem. 16%! Sure, this is just a small sampling of Twitter users, but like I said last time, if the actual number across the entire install base is anything even remotely close to this number, that's millions and millions of people having huge problems with their Joy-Cons. A constant problem. Though I must say, it is really weird how for some people this is a constant problem, and others just never experience it, even when they play handheld a lot. It's possible that some units are prone to wear, but others aren't, though that doesn't really make sense considering most people buy multiple sets of Joy-Cons. All of mine eventually drift no matter what. It seems like the only real explanation is that the problem is created by a specific action on the control sticks themselves. This wouldn't be anything neglectful, just something that some people do and others don't. I've heard theories about it having something to do with allowing the stick to snap back into place instead of easing it, but it's all just speculation. It's really hard to test something that can take a year to happen through regular use, which is one of the reasons this whole thing is so hard to track and observe and properly fix. Another thing I'd like to mention before we wrap this up. In the other video, I kind of touched on how the Joy-Con problem is definitely the biggest problem with Switch hardware, and the Switch doesn't have any other massive design flaws like a few other consoles over the years, but there do seem to be way more issues with the Switch than with any other Nintendo system. Properly cared for Nintendo systems tend to last forever, but the Switch seems to finally be the exception. Kane, who is editing this video, waved to him, "Hey Kane!" He downloaded a system update and his system immediately died. It was that one update that was giving people trouble, though no one else was reporting bricked systems, so it might have been a coincidence. But whatever the case, Nintendo insisted that he pay hundreds of dollars to have it fixed. The 1-year warranty had expired, so that was that. They absolutely refused to budge. Like, I get that they're in the legal right, assuming the update didn't kill the thing. The warranty was expired, right? But it's a little disturbing to think that at any time, my Switch might die like Kane's. If I let my Switch Online subscription lapse, all of my save data for all my games will be lost forever. And I'll have to pay close to the price of a brand new Switch just to get the thing repaired. And while unlikely, the same thing could happen again after a year and 1 day, when the warranty was freshly expired and Nintendo would charge me again. I didn't used to have to worry about this stuff with Nintendo. I don't like having to worry. And that's really the biggest issue at the end of the day. It's not just about the inconvenience of having to swap out a control stick or stuff a Joy-Con in a box and take it to UPS. It's about trust. When it came to hardware, Nintendo used to mean quality. And as I've said countless times, I do believe they're not just your average money-grubbing media machine. At least in some way, the company feels like it's run by real people who have a legitimate passion for what they do. And we all know they love being the weird, whimsical, against-the-grain company in a sea of cynical, trend-chasing AAA corporations. Miyamoto himself is all about the magic that happens when a person puts a controller in their hands. Even to their own detriment sometimes. Nintendo focuses extremely hard on that iconic image of a family all enjoying a game together. But Nintendo's at something of a crossroads here. Are they a whimsical, family-centric bunch of dreamers who make electronic toys? Or are they a cold, calculated media conglomerate who will not hesitate to throw millions of people under the bus as long as it bumps up their bottom line? Because they can't have their cake and eat it too in this case. And while lots of big game companies are weirdly self-destructive in their quests for moolah because they're run by people who always planned on jumping ship the moment they ran everything into the ground, when you look at the truly huge, household name, long-haul corporations that Nintendo tries to emulate, they usually know better than to upset their customers. At least to this degree. I already went on and on about how Microsoft faced a billion-dollar problem head-on because they knew that protecting their brand was far more important than money. And if you go to Disney World, you're gonna pay out the nose, but they're gonna make sure, absolutely sure, that you have a good time. If you meet Mickey, he ain't gonna break character for even 1 second, and the autograph he gives you is gonna look just like the one he was giving out 65 years ago. So this whole thing where Nintendo's willing to betray the trust of millions and throw out their decades-old legacy of reliable, long-lasting hardware because it would cost too much money to redesign the Joy-Cons, and potentially because they're making a ton of extra money from people buying new ones? It ain't right. It's downright gross. If this were a bigger problem, I have no doubt that Nintendo would have been forced to act sooner. Maybe if systems were dying like Xbox 360s, they would have done whatever it took to fix the issue. But this is a bad problem that's just okay enough for them to ignore. It's not quite serious enough to cause a big stink and affect their sales. And I have to presume that's why they haven't really acted. They didn't even acknowledge the problem until they were facing lawsuits. Then they did the bare minimum and left it at that. And that's sad. I do not throw the word insult around lightly, and I am not normally one to take things personally. It takes a lot to downright offend me. But this is insulting. As a long-time customer who funnels absurd amounts of money into their coffers, this feels like a bit of a slap in the face. For digging in their heels and refusing to address the problem when it first reared its ugly head, they deserve whatever they've got coming to them. I'm gonna keep buying their games and talking about them on my channel, and yes, even loving them. But if this becomes their own billion-dollar Red Ring of Death equivalent, well, I'm a smile and shrug. You're losing a bunch of money now, huh? That's too bad. What's that? Sorry, I can't hear you over the sound of this canned air. Well, I'm sure I'll inevitably come up with more specifics to complain about, and I'll probably see you in a few years with another update. Although really, more than anything, I think I'm just tired of saying the word Joy-Con today. Don't even talk about Drift down in the comments. Let's just talk about something else. Like bears. Let's just talk about bears. Let's talk about bears. Go down to the comments and talk about bears. I'll see you later. I'm feeling better already.